Hi guys, it's Christina from Redefine Creative, and I am super excited to be kicking off November, in which we're going to be doing 30 days of sketches. And so this is a series with my friend Christy from Christy's Beautiful Life. And for this month, both myself and Crystal from Pineapple Papers are going to be joining her. And so today I wanted to play with some really fun Paige Evans kind of leftovers. And so you can see the sketch off there on the left. And I decided rather than going with a plain background paper, I'm going to go with this kind of sunburst type of paper that has all kinds of bright colors. And off screen, before I started, I went ahead and took some white thread and stitched along all of the lines that were in white in that background paper. And so in between each of those colored sections is a line of stitching, and you'll see that better in the close-ups. And so then I'm just thinking about all these layers behind my photo. So I have a 4x4 photo, and I'm wanting to just kind of stack up tons of bright, fun colors and lots of layers, just like in the sketch. In the sketch, it called for, off on the left, there's a circle element, and it's stitched in the sketch. But because I had done some stitching already on my background, I decided that I didn't necessarily want to repeat that element. And so I have a doily going in place of where that circular element is. And that's kind of one of my go-tos, either like a doily or a little viewfinder cut file or something like that. And I was going to include some stitching on top of the doily. And if you check out Christy's video from today, you will see that she actually did that same idea. But I ended up with so many layers behind my photo that the place where I would have stitched on the doily sort of ended up covered up. So I didn't go in that direction. And I'm just going to kind of focus on all of these pattern paper layers that I have going on. Some of these are from 12x12 paper, and then some of them are from the 6x6. And I'm going to use that kind of watercolor paper there in the 6x6 as the bottom layer of my photo mat. And so I have the green paper I cut into a little bit of a banner, and I am doing that because I know that what I want to create later with my title is going to fit in that green space underneath. So I'm kind of thinking ahead a little bit in that respect. I did go ahead and put the foam on my photo mats here, but I did it in between the rest of my layers and that watercolor paper. So the watercolor is going to look more like it's flat on the page along with the doily, and then the rest of my layers have a little bit more dimension and oomph, I guess you could say, to them. So I'm thinking about how I want to kind of tie everything together. I am using just a little bit of ink around some of my layers here in this Coral Cabana color to kind of tie everything together. I know that I'm going to have these two tags facing each other, just like they are in the sketch, and that I need a bunch of little strips of paper. And so I'm just kind of going back to my scraps and cutting a bunch here, and I'm not worrying about making them straight or even or anything like that. I'm just trimming out a few scraps, and they're going to go into that cluster over on the side. And then I also know that I want to have an element up where there is an embellishment cluster in the sketch. But rather than including it fully on the layout like the sketch itself does, I'm going to have mine off the edge of the page, and that's a strategy that I often use on my layouts where I have kind of an embellishment cluster that extends off the edge. Now, rather than using a bow between my two tags like there are in the sketch, I'm going to tie them together with some string, and I'm going to end up taking one of the little charms that came in this Paige Evans collection and tie it on to that area. So there's going to be a little heart charm that kind of hangs down instead of just a bow like there is in the sketch. And so I'm just kind of making sure that I like the placement of all of that before I work on this top cluster that I'm going to have going on. And I want to have two tags up there in that element layered up together as well. And then I'm also going to add some more strips of pattern paper. Kind of the same thing as before. I'm not really like using a paper trimmer or measuring. I just want them to extend across that edge and include all of the fun colors that I included in my photo mat as well. So there really isn't like a rhyme or a reason or anything specific and measured about this layout. It's just kind of tucking in little pieces of paper where I can have some additional color kind of show through. And that's one of my favorite strategies to use, is just kind of sitting down and playing. So how can I layer these things? What size pieces do I need? How can I kind of make everything look cohesive? rather than having everything quite so like measured out and precise and exact. So I'm going to go ahead and trim the tops of those tags off. So my embellishment cluster up there is just going to have the 2 tags. I thought about bringing in a third area of a tag, but it was too much. Like, it was too overpowering for the layout. So I abandoned that idea. Off screen, I did fussy cut some of these little scallop borders from one of the pattern papers from this collection as well. And I'm just going to use some little pieces of that into some of my clusters, and it just kind of gives me a different shape. All of my other layers are squares and rectangles, and so these are going to give me just a little bit of the curve to kind of play off of that doily. So anytime I'm putting a layout together, I'm really kind of thinking about balancing out the shapes and creating interest. And so part of the way that I'm doing that here is making sure my doily isn't the only circular element on the layout, because everything else is so geometric. I want to have a little bit more of that kind of free-flowing idea throughout the layout as well. And so that's where these scallops are going to come in handy, because it's going to really break up the square elements from all of my paper layers and my tags and things. And so I'm just tucking those into each of those clusters where I think that they will fit and need to go. And then I'm going to grab that little charm that I told you about and tie that on between my 2 tags here. And I thought about adding an additional charm up in the top cluster, but I ended up feeling like it was just too much. Like, you know how sometimes when you add embellishments, at first you're like, add everything, pile it on, keep going, add more, add more, add more. But then you get to a certain point where you're like, wait a minute, this is like too much of the same thing, or too much overkill. And so because those charms are so weighty, they have a bigger bulk to them, they have more of a weight on the layout. Just one of them in that conjoined kind of tag area worked out better. I was playing around with the idea of getting some of those epoxy flare from Scrap and Happy Studio on there, but they don't end up making the cut this time. So I'm just going to kind of go through the rest of my embellishments. I've got some puffy stickers. I have some enamel dots. I'm just kind of playing around with how I want all of my embellishments to kind of work. And so I know my main 2 clusters are going to be on those 2 sets of tags, and then I also have one in the bottom that's going to go in that green section where I end up putting my title. So that's kind of where my mind is while I'm working on this particular layout, is thinking about that's where I want my 3 kind of clusters of embellishments to be centered. I know that I'm going to pull out some puffy sticker alphas, and here they are. These are the periwinkle ones from Pink Fresh Studio, and I'm just going to use those to write out the bigger part of my title, which is just going to be Find Joy. And then I'm going to end up pairing it with some phrase stickers to make the rest of my title. So it's going to end up saying Find Joy in the Small Secrets. And that works perfectly for this picture, because this particular photo is this little rock with a butterfly painted on it, like nestled up against a tree. And so my kids had found this. We were at my son's football practice, and they found this kind of hidden treasure against one of the trees. And so we took pictures, but we left it for someone else to find and collect, because little things like that, just bring joy. And so my kids were very taken with this idea that people will paint these little rocks and then hide them all over. And so that's something that they actually want to do as well. We're going to get some rocks and go ahead and paint them so that we can hide them around for people as well. But because it made such an impact on my kids, that's kind of the story that I wanted to tell with this particular layout. So the title of Finding Joy in the Small Secrets kind of worked perfectly to tie the photo and my journaling and all of that kind of thing together. So I am just flipping through some of my Tim Holtz sticker phrase books. I have some that give whole phrases, and I have some that just give words. And so I was trying to find the right combination of things that I wanted to use. The one on top of my photo just says there is beauty in simplicity. And then the 2 in the very top corner say it's the little things that make life big. And then I went ahead and used the words to find in the small secrets so that I could finish off my title. And then I'm going back and kind of adding some additional puffy sticker and chipboard hearts so that all of my clusters end up having 3 hearts, whether they are puffy stickers or chipboard. So there is some of them that kind of fall into each category. And then I am going to go back and also add some enamel dots. And I am making sure that each cluster also has 3 of those. So I like to do things in threes, unless I'm trying to create kind of an unusual look or something that's going to seem a little bit different. And then I will go ahead and use a different number, just because I think everyone kind of sticks with 3, and that's kind of what design principles tell us. But sometimes it's kind of nice to play around with a different number and have something a little bit unexpected. So I would encourage you, it is lovely and wonderful to follow the kind of design principles and elements, but then there's also a time and a place for doing something a little bit different and making it unique and a little bit quirky, and I like to do that too. Sorry about that little shake up of the camera there, guys. I probably hit my head because, that happens more often than I would like to admit, that I hit my head on my camera stand. Anybody else? Is there anybody else in here who makes videos and hits their head on their camera stand? Because that would make me feel better. But that's basically going to do it. I'm just doing some little tiny finishing touches, like making sure that I have inked all of my edges of things and have everything kind of coordinated together. I was looking for my journaling pen. That's what I was doing while I was off screen. I'm sorry, guys. Oh, this poor video. All right, so I'm just going to add some journaling on that tag, just talking about finding these hand-painted rocks and how excited the kids were about these little hidden secrets and hidden treasures. And it's just going to fill out that one little tag because I don't have a ton of things that I need to say. And that is basically going to finish off this layout. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing my ramblings a little bit today about my process. The video is a little bit longer, but I wanted to kind of leave in some of those little spots that sometimes we tend to cut out, where you see that it's a little bit more kind of chaotic creating than you sometimes believe here on YouTube. Do make sure you stop out and check Christy's layout as well as Crystal's to see what they have done with this sketch, and I will see you soon, guys. Bye!